Hello everybody, my name is Jackie and welcome to Prairie Sports Talk, the podcast where we talk about sports that directly impact the Canadian Prairie. Today is June 13th, 2024, and after missing a normal episode last week, we have a lot to talk about. So, we're going to open up with some Swift Current 57's news. We're also going to talk about this week and last week in the CFL. And then we're also going to talk about the NBA Finals and the Stanley Cup. And as if that wasn't enough, we're also going to talk about Reid Dyck being released from the Boston Bruins. We're going to talk about Logan Ferland making a interesting decision, we'll say, in the Rough Riders and Elks game. And we're going to close out by talking a little bit about Caitlin Clark. We got a lot to talk about. Let's get into it. If you went out to Mitchell Field this past Friday, June the 7th, you got to watch an insane game of baseball. Now, 5-1, that's a pretty average game. That's not uncommon in baseball. It was a bit uncommon that a team recorded their second win nearly 10 games into the season, but that's not the most interesting part of the game. The most interesting part, the winning pitcher, Kenny Jinks of the Swift Current 57s, threw an insane 18 strikeouts over the course of 8 innings. 18! That is absurd. I'm struggling to put into words how impressive that is. He was averaging over 2 strikeouts an inning. And then the closer came in, got 3 more strikeouts, just in case Moose Jaw hadn't got the message yet. An absolutely insane game. Hopefully this is enough to get the struggling Swift Current 57s on the right track. Although the next game, also against Moose Jaw did beat them 8-4. I guess Moose Jaw was mad. But that doesn't take away from the fact that Kenny Jinks threw 18 strikeouts. I cannot emphasize that enough. That is an absolute insane game. I can't wait for the next game he starts. If this is a sign of things to come for him, he's in for a great season, and I'm excited to watch it. This past Thursday, the CFL kicked off. The CFL is my bread and butter. I have been waiting for this since the Grey Cup ended last season. So those of you who have followed me on Twitter, that is Jackie Knobs, JACKYKNOBS. If you want to follow me, that is in the description down below. But for those of you who do follow me already, you know I do a lot of CFL predictions. And I have been doing it for the last 2 seasons now. And I feel like I've done pretty good. In fact, after the Grey Cup last season, my total record was 115 correct and 45 incorrect. I'd say that's pretty good. So this season, I want to continue that. Now, unfortunately, because of time restraints and my personal life just being so chaotic at the moment, I was unable to get a regular episode out like I had planned. But I want to still talk about my predictions, because I did make my predictions public on Twitter. Link to that thread will be in the description down below as well. So I want to talk about my predictions a little bit first, and then I'm going to talk about my predictions for next week. So let's get into it. So I predicted that Winnipeg would beat Montreal. The reason I thought this is, despite the fact Winnipeg is Asian, they still have a very, very skilled team. And I thought this team would be able to take down Montreal, which, yes, they have a great team. They will likely win the East. But I felt like between Winnipeg starting at home, Winnipeg not losing a home opener in the last 5 seasons, and Winnipeg probably being quite angry after losing the Grey Cup last season, I felt like that an angry Collaros and an angry Blue Bombers team would take down Montreal. This ended up being incorrect. To my surprise, to my pleasant surprise to be more exact. The Montreal Alouettes beat Winnipeg at home. Winnipeg is now 0-1, Montreal is now 1-0. And then we move on to the second game. Calgary beating Hamilton. Unsurprisingly, a young Jake Mayo trying to prove last season's struggles were nothing more than a blip on his career, took down his former mentor in Bo Levi Mitchell. I feel like Hamilton has had some real issues trying to build up a team. And I feel like they have a habit of going for players that can no longer perform in the way they once did. And no better player exemplifies this than Bo Levi Mitchell. Bo, he is a future Hall of Famer. He is one of the all-time greats. He will likely have his number retired in Calgary. But at the end of the day, 2024 Bo Levi Mitchell is not as good as 2019 Bo Levi Mitchell. Since the pandemic ended, Bo Levi's career has been on a downslide. I don't see this changing this season. I think Bo Levi should have retired in 2021 and let Jake Mayo take the reins in 2022 without having Bo have to go down first. I feel like Bo will make a tremendous TSN analyst, but I think his playing days, or at least the best of his playing days, are likely behind him. So I got that game right. Young Jake Mayo beats Bo Levi Mitchell. No surprise there. Calgary beats Hamilton. And then I had Saskatchewan beating Edmonton. Saskatchewan had a tremendous offseason. I'd say they probably had the best offseason out of any team, between getting a really good head coach plus a really good coaching staff, not to mention signing like seemingly 90% of the major free agents out there, most notably AJ Ouellette. I felt like Saskatchewan would just walk through Edmonton in this game. Now, for reasons I will get into at the end of the episode regarding Logan Ferland, the Riders kind of struggled in this game. But Sean Bain Jr.'s 3 touchdowns pushed the Riders over the top, and they managed to hold on for a win. And that is the important thing. The Riders are 1-0. Edmonton is 0-1. Edmonton showed me a lot that I didn't expect them to show. But at the same time, I also feel like they will likely be in the basement of the West. And if they're lucky, they'll maybe get 5 wins. Maybe. I can't see this season being much different than last season or the season before. Because, yes, they got these new shiny players. Curly Gittins Jr., McLeod, Bethel, Thompson. They got all these great offensive and defensive weapons. Want to know what they don't have? A head coach who is keeping up in the modern CFL and an offensive line. Chris Jones was a tremendous head coach. Was. He's not anymore. Chris Jones probably shouldn't have come back to the CFL after leaving Cleveland. I feel like at this point he's tarnishing his legacy. And I feel like one of the things tarnishing said legacy is the fact he just isn't going out there and getting an offensive line. He has got 2 stellar quarterbacks in McLeod, Bethel Thompson, and Trey Ford. But he's got no one to protect them. He's spending all this money on 2 quarterbacks and next to nothing comparatively on the offensive line. I feel like that is holding Edmonton back right now. So I predicted Edmonton would lose, and I ended up being right. Now on to prediction I got wrong. I predicted BC would beat Toronto. I thought BC would handle Toronto, to say the very least. I felt like BC would likely run away with this game, although I did have this picked as my game of the week. Toronto showed me otherwise. I thought that a Chad Kelly-less Toronto Argonauts team would not be able to keep up with a BC team that, in my opinion, has more to prove this season than any other team. And I felt like Cameron Dukes was not going to have the kind of game that Vernon Adams was going to have. I felt like VA would throw for 300 plus, William Stanback would get another 100 on the ground. I felt like Kadeem Carey might be underutilized in the offense because I felt like Toronto was likely going to go with a pass-heavy team this year after losing Ouellette. But much to my surprise, Stanback was held to just 35 yards on the ground and 5 through the air for 40 all-purpose yards. And Kadeem Carey, despite only having 65 yards, which don't get me wrong, that is a good game, is not the games we have come to expect from Kadeem Carey, but it's still a very good game. His major impact was blocking, not to mention Cameron Dukes playing out of his mind all game long. So Toronto ended up proving me wrong. I have no issue with that. Because if Cameron Dukes comes in, shows Toronto that they don't need Chad Kelly, and Chad Kelly comes back from his 9+ game suspension, doesn't get the starting job back because Dukes is doing so good, I feel like that is a problem that has taken care of itself in the CFL with Chad Kelly's supposed actions, to say the very least. Alright, my week 1 predictions, not bad at all. Not bad at all. 2-2 for opening week, I'm not going to complain. I feel like I could have done better, but I'm also always a lot more nervous about my week 1 picks than every other pick, because you never really know what you're going to get from a team. Because you've only seen them in preseason, and you haven't seen 2 team starters go head-to-head for a whole game. But now we have seen that for 8 out of 9 teams in the CFL, and I feel like I have a bit better of a grip on what the season might look like this year. So that brings my total record to 117 and 47. That's pretty good. I'm happy with that. So, on to this week's predictions. So, I think Winnipeg will roll into Ottawa and just destroy the Red Blacks. I don't think this game will be close. The Red Blacks, they're a better team than they were last season. I'm glad Bob Dice is their head coach. I feel like he can take the team places, but it's not going to be an instant turnaround after a few bad seasons. I feel like Winnipeg is going to be very upset after losing their home opener. And they're just going to walk into Ottawa, take out all their anger on a team that is significantly less skilled than them. And this game shouldn't be close. Now, I will say one thing about Ottawa. They will either be super well rested and in sync headed into week 2 because this will be their first game, or they're just going to be completely out of sync and it's going to be a hard game to watch because they didn't get to play last week like every other team did. I feel like Winnipeg is just going to walk in, take care of business, walk out, and that's that. And then I think Montreal will beat Edmonton. Now, Montreal is flying very high after a week 1 victory against the Bombers. They looked really good in that game. One thing that I really like to see was Cody Fajardo airing the ball out deep down the field, showing everyone he can, in fact, throw the deep ball. And I feel like Montreal's well-rounded team and their well-rounded defense, to be more specific, will just walk right through Edmonton's offensive line that is basically non-existent. I feel like Montreal is the best team in the East, and they will almost definitely win the East in my opinion. I also think this is going to be a very high-scoring game because despite the lack of an offensive line, MBT, McLeod Bethel-Thompson, he's a very skilled quarterback and he has very skilled receivers with him. So if he can get the ball off, there's always the chance of the play breaking for a big gain or even a touchdown. But with that said, I also feel like Montreal's offense is so well-rounded, there's no real weak spots in it. And I feel like that is going to allow Cody Fajardo to manufacture a lot of long drives resulting in points. And I feel like if this turns into a war of attrition, Montreal will just outwork and out-tire Edmonton. And if they don't, I think what will happen instead is Montreal is just going to bowl through this game. I'll be shocked if Edmonton puts up much of a fight past the third quarter. Now, on to my Saskatchewan Roughriders taking on the Hamilton Tiger Cats. This is a story of two teams that handled Week 1 adversity very, very differently. Saskatchewan went into halftime trailing Edmonton, and they came out in the second half, got back to business, regained their focus, took care of business in the third and fourth quarters, including 21 points in the fourth quarter, and went on to beat Edmonton. Hamilton, at no point except in the closing minutes did it even look like they had a chance to beat Calgary. And the only reason it looked close was a couple late game scores that didn't amount to anything of note because Hamilton's defense couldn't do anything, and then their special teams couldn't recover an onside kick. They couldn't even get it to the 10-yard minimum to begin with. I feel like there is no real reason for the Riders to lose, especially if they can start to get AJ Ouellette and Samuel Emerles established this season. I feel like the Riders receiving core is just going to terrify a good chunk of the league because you've got Samuel Emerles, you've got Sean Baines Jr., and as an afterthought to most teams, you still got to worry about Keon Schaefer-Baker. Now, I'm not going to lie, I am biased. I'm a Rider fan. But that does not change the fact I think the Riders are a significantly better team than Hamilton. And I feel like Hamilton's inability to put together a team of players who aren't on a downswing of their career, I feel like that is going to haunt them all season long, and it's going to continue to haunt them until they start to get players who are either getting close to the peak of their career or just hitting their peak of their career, or even, I don't know, developing their own players instead of just signing these older veterans like Bo Levi Mitchell. I don't know, just a thought. I'm not a coach, I'm not a GM, but it's just a thought. I feel like this is going to be a very good week. And I have saved my game of the week for last. BC and Calgary. I feel like this is going to be a fun game. Because you've got two high-powered offenses going head-to-head. Now, it's BC's home opener this week. And they're not going to be too happy after losing a game many think they should have won, including myself. And they're going to want to prove that they are a team that has the potential to not just get first place in the West through the regular season, but maybe even be the team to represent the West in the Grey Cup. But first, they need to start winning. I feel like this is BC's best shot at the Grey Cup they've had in years, and I feel like they know that. So VA, this is likely his only real shot, honestly. VA is a player who's been around the CFL for a while now. He's a very skilled player. He has shown flashes of brilliance in the past, but we didn't really see him live up to the potential he had until last season. And now that BC has really not just built a good team, but built a good team around him, I feel like they are a really good team who just ran into a team that was slightly better in Toronto last week. Now, Calgary, don't get me wrong, they are a good team, but they're relatively average. Now, I'm not saying they're average in the CFL as a whole. I'm saying in terms of the West, they're middle of the road. I'd say it's likely BC is a lot better than everyone else, and then Winnipeg, Calgary, and Saskatchewan are just kind of pushed all together into the middle, and then Edmonton somewhere way down there. Like, grab a shovel if you want to go looking for them. But I feel like Calgary's still going to have a good season, but I doubt they will win this game. I feel like BC is just going to be too mad, and they just have such a well-rounded team. It's going to be hard for any team to keep up with them on all sides of the ball. Now, if you've been watching my podcast for most of the Stanley Cup playoffs, you know my prediction for the Stanley Cup champions has not changed. And well, why stop if it's still working? I still believe the Edmonton Oilers will be your 2024 Stanley Cup champions. I know, as of recording, they are down 2-0 in the series. But here's the thing. They were playing in Florida for both those games. A Floridian crowd that wants the Stanley Cup after coming oh so close last season and dropping it to Vegas. But when the series shifts back to Edmonton, you got another thing. Because in Canada, it has been 31 years since a Canadian team has won the Stanley Cup. And it's been 33 years since Edmonton has won. So if you don't think Edmonton and Canada as a whole want this Stanley Cup more than almost anyone, you got another thing coming. Because, well, here's the thing. Edmonton is arguably this year's Edmonton Oilers team is arguably one of the best Canadian teams in recent memory. I mean, you got the literal best player in the world, Connor McDavid, on your team. You've got a player who would be a number one on almost any other team as his number two in Leon Draisaitl. You got Zach Hyman, who's coming off a 50-goal season. You got Stuart Skinner, who, yes, has struggled at points in the playoffs, but he still has championship experience. He won the Edge North Cup with the Swift Current Broncos. This is a team that has all the right tools. They just need to put them back together. And I think this will come down to two players in particular. Unsurprisingly, Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl. If either of those two, or both of them, solve Bobrovsky, it's over. Edmonton needs to take both of these games in Edmonton, and then they will eventually need to win either Game 5 or Game 7 in Florida, plus also taking Game 6 at home. So Edmonton still has a hill to climb, but I think if any team can, it's them. They have the roster. They have a great coach in Chris Knobloch. They are a really good team. They just need to put it back together. And I think they will. I think Edmonton will win the Stanley Cup in 7 games. I think the cup is coming back to Canada. I've said it before, I'll say it again. The drought ends now. On to the NBA Finals. Oh, you thought we were done with predictions? Nah, not yet. We still got another league to cover today. The Dallas Mavericks and the Boston Celtics are going head-to-head in the NBA Finals. Now, I picked Dallas. I didn't really say this publicly or anything, not all that much. I didn't really make predictions for the majority of the playoffs, but I picked Dallas to win the finals once I found out what the matchup was going to be. And so far, I'm looking like an idiot. Because through the first 2 games, Dallas has played like trash. I'm not going to sugarcoat it in the slightest because they've had one player performing to their abilities. And unsurprisingly, it's Luka Doncic. He is one of the best players in the league. Easily one of the best. But he's also going up against another one of the players who's easily one of the best players in the league in Jason Tatum. Now, the Mavericks made a decision this season to bring in Kyrie Irving to be the number 2 for Luka. Now, for the regular season and most of the postseason, this decision has looked genius. Luka has excelled with Kyrie by his side. But now into the finals, Kyrie, what is going on? Because you have yet to score more than 16 points in 2 games. Meanwhile, you got Luka Doncic getting a double-double in Game 1 and a triple-double in Game 2. Kyrie needs to step it up because if he doesn't, Boston's going to run away with this. If the Mavs continue to play like they have, this is going to be a 4-game sweep. I think if Kyrie can look like, well, Kyrie, the Mavs still can win this series. It will be a slog, but they can. Now, the question is, will Kyrie look like himself? Well, that remains to be seen. I hope he does, because I love Doncic. I'd love to see him get a ring. But with that said, I also love Tatum. I'd love to see him get a ring. They're both still pretty young, so in all likelihood, they will both probably end up with likely multiple rings by the end of their careers. But I still think the Mavs have a chance to come back in this series. Standout goalie for the Swift-Current Broncos, Reid Dyck, has been cut by the Boston Bruins. Now, on one hand, this shouldn't be overly shocking. Boston has a very deep depth chart with goalies. Like, just for example, both of their NHL goalies could be superstar starters for almost any other team in the NHL and no one would bat an eye. But on the other hand, Reid Dyck is coming off a tremendous WHL season with the Swift-Current Broncos, getting an insane .911 save percentage with 2.7 goals against. That is pretty good, especially considering that for a good chunk of the season, he made the Broncos look better than they were. It wasn't until the trade deadline that the Broncos actually became the team that Reid Dyck made them look like. Broncos had a very skilled team leading up to the deadline, but not nearly as good as Reid Dyck made them look. Now, Reid Dyck will likely land on his feet in the NHL. He can re-enter the 2024 NHL entry draft, and he probably will. I think Reid Dyck still has a very, very bright future in hockey, probably the NHL, maybe the A, but I think the N. And I feel like whatever team ends up getting him will get a very skilled goalie, and I can't wait to see what the future holds for this young man. So, quick question for Logan Ferland. Why? Just why? Why did you do that? In the second quarter of the Edmonton Elks Saskatchewan Roughriders game, the Riders were really starting to pick up momentum. They were driving down the field. It was looking like this was going to be another drive where the Riders at very least got a field goal, but there was a very real chance they were going to score a touchdown when once again tempos start to flare up between the two teams, and for some unknown reason, Roughriders right guard Logan Ferland punches an Edmonton Elk player. He got ejected for the game, and the Riders got a 25-yard penalty which took them out of field goal range, and they ended up having to punt. The next Rough Rider drive, it started very deep in the Riders' end, and Logan Ferland's replacement, without having a chance to warm up, gets thrown in there, and he gets bull rushed by the Elks defensive lineman, who runs over Trevor Harris, ensuring the Riders will have to punt from ridiculously deep in their own end. Now, Ferland likely will not play in the next game. Now, whether that comes from a league suspension or a team suspension, it's hard to say. But I will be genuinely shocked if he's in the next game. Lee got it right here. That was the right call. I just want to know what Ferland was thinking when he threw that punch. Let's talk about the best women's basketball player in the world, Caitlin Clark. Well, it seems some people would disagree with me on that statement already, because Caitlin Clark did not make the US women's basketball team for the 2024 Olympics in Paris this year. Now, a quote from the chair of the Women's National Team Committee for USA Basketball, Jen Rossetti, I apologize if I mispronounced her name. She explained Caitlin's absence like this, end quote. There has been a 3-year process for us. Caitlin, in addition to the other players that didn't make the team, have been evaluated on their whole body of work. There definitely were some unique circumstances surrounding Caitlin, but at the end of the day, I'm proud our committee stayed honed in their selection criteria, unquote. So to me, that sounds like she's talking about a lack of experience was the reason Caitlin didn't make the team. But to that I say, is experience really that important that you're willing to cut arguably the top player in the world from your team? I mean, like, yes, there's other very, very skilled women's basketball players in the States, but that doesn't change the fact that in just her rookie season, Caitlin is looking very, very good. Now, she's not playing as the best player in many statistical categories, but that does not change the fact she's probably been the best all-around player in the league at the moment. Now, I'm still learning about the WNBA, but that's just my opinion at the moment, so it feels a bit weird to me for them to not have Caitlin Clark on the team, considering how good she is all on the whole all around. But that's just my opinion on it. I wanted to touch on it a little bit since I'm hoping to talk about the WNBA more as we get more info on the Canadian expansion team. I don't know, this whole situation just feels really weird to me that they didn't select Caitlin Clark, and I feel like is a mistake. And all I'm saying is if the US women's team doesn't win gold, everyone is going to question their decision to not have Clark on the team. But that is everything I have for you guys this week. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe if you're on YouTube. And if you're on Spotify, be sure to follow the 13th Man Podcast Network over there. I hope you guys have a great week. I hope you guys have a great day. I hope you guys have a great whatever. Stay safe, stay strong, you got this. And this is Jackie for Prairie Sports Talk signing off.